Bit more of a casual video for you guys today. I'm not going to be citing a ton of my stuff here like usual, and I'm going to go light on the editing since I want to get more videos out, and it honestly takes me a really long time to do them in the way that I usually do them with all the citations. So just know that a lot of the information in this video was either directly from my brain and/or memory, or it was closely pulled off of the UESP. I hope you enjoy it nonetheless though. So, Warlocks are my favorite class to play in D&D and in Baldur's Gate 3, and with all the recent Daedric lore I've been ingesting, I started to wonder about Warlocks in the Elder Scrolls universe. See, for those who don't know, Warlocks are spellcasters who draw their magic from entering into a contract with or the service of a powerful being. And in Elder Scrolls, the Daedric Princes would be the perfect such beings to act as Warlock patrons. However, not all Warlock pacts are of the same value. The relationship between a Warlock and their patron is essential to the structure of the contract. Some Warlock patrons are quite demanding of their Warlocks. The nature of the being whose contract you signed will greatly determine the tasks you must fulfill in order to keep your powers, and perhaps your very life. So, I'm here today to help you pick your perfect Daedric princely patron that will suit your needs for all your Warlock business. I think we'll just take things alphabetically down the list and work our way through all the Daedric beings that could assist you on your journey. I'm not including Athelia in this list. Starting off, we have Azura. Azura is the Daedric Prince of Dusk and Dawn, Twilight, Mystery, Fate, and interestingly, also Vanity and Egotism, which makes a lot of sense in her case, honestly, because she's a huge narcissist. Of all the Daedric princes, though, Azura is one of the few that has an overall positive reputation, with her actually being a standard Daedra to worship as a member of the Reclamations under the new temple in Morrowind. With that said, that doesn't mean that being her warlock would be easy. According to the book Invocation of Azura, she is said to be a cruel but wise mistress. Honestly, all things considered, Azura would probably be a pretty good warlock patron so long as you stay on her good side. Of all of her followers, Indoril Nerevar is by far the most well-known. Nerevar was the Hortator of the ancient Chimer people, and was likewise the champion of Azura. It is said that the two shared a very special relationship with one another. Considering that he received artifacts and power from her, you could call Nerevar a warlock of sorts. Regardless, upon Nerevar's death, she became extraordinarily vengeful and vindictive of his killers, the Tribunal. And in punishing those three, she cursed the entirety of the Chimer people, transforming them into the Dunmer, whose ashen skin and red eyes were to be a reminder of the darkness and blindness of the Tribunal's actions that day. She then swore that Nerevar would one day be reincarnated to take revenge upon the false gods as the Nerevarine. So pretty messed up, honestly, cursing an entire race of people for the actions of just three, but if you're the Nerevarine, it's a pretty good deal, honestly. Just follow Azura and you'll be set, is the basic rule here. In Skyrim, we hear that Azura foresaw the Red Year happening, but she only warned the faithful from her flock, leaving thousands of Dunmer to die for no reason. Again, good for her followers, bad for everyone else. And this harkens back to her vanity and egocentrism. Azura is also well known for her artifact Azura's Star, which acts as an extremely powerful soul gem. So if you want to be a warlock in Elder Scrolls, Azura could be a good fit, but you'd best not mess with her or betray her in any sort of way, otherwise she'll definitely come for you. But she does seem to treat her followers with at least some modicum of respect. Boethiah is next up on our list, and they're a really neat Daedric Prince, honestly. Boethiah is known as the Daedric Prince of Plots, and their spheres include murder, deceit, conspiracy, assassination, and the unlawful overthrow of authority. I've always seen conflict, combat, and challenge as well as parts of Boethiah's nature. Boethiah is often depicted as a warrior clad in heavy armor with a battle axe, after all. Boethiah is actually one of the few Daedra who've utilized their powers to appear as both male and female before, so that's also kind of neat, and they are another one of the Reclamations that are worshipped under the new temple canon alongside Azura. In fact, Boethiah is extremely important to Dark Elf culture, as it was through their words that Saint Veloth was first illuminated. Boethiah helped guide the Chimer people to Morrowind and defeated Trinimac, the champion of Auriel, turning him into the Daedric Prince of Malacath. As such, Boethiah is seen as somewhat of an ancestor to the Dunmer people, and is credited through some sources with guiding many aspects of Dunmeri culture. Boethiah's stories of overcoming struggle are foundational to Chimeri and therefore Dunmeri mythology, and because of this, their followers are no strangers to conflict. In Oblivion, the hero of Kvatch can enter into the Tournament of 10 Bloods, which is a trial by combat, wherein the survivor of the gauntlet is granted their powerful artifact, Goldbrand. In Skyrim, Boethiah's followers appease them by, again, ritual combat, and Boethiah tasks the last Dragonborn with killing their old champion in order to become the new one, receiving the Ebony Mail in the process. There is a constant striving towards betterment and upward mobility in society within Boethiah's sphere, no matter the cost. Through subterfuge, assassination, and combat, their followers all must prove themselves to be worthy. So if you're thinking about choosing Boethiah as your Warlock patron, be warned. Boethiah is honestly not very kind to their followers. It will likely be a dangerous path to tread, as Boethiah will constantly be sending followers to challenge you and forcing you to compete with others for their favor. But if you've truly earned your place, a pact with the Prince of Plots could be quite fruitful. Clavicus Vile is up next. We can probably keep this section quick. In short, don't become a Warlock of Clavicus Vile unless you're really trying to roleplay a foolish character of some sort. His spheres are trickery and granting wishes through pacts. On paper, he'd be the perfect Daedric Prince for a Warlock, but in practice, he's really just a big asshole. He's pretty much a genie who's going to give you the worst, most slanted contract he can. I always like to joke that he's actually the Daedric Prince of bad faith deals. He's also a bit of a fool, and he's said to find his eternal life to be boring, which is likely why he enjoys messing with mortals so much. His companion, a Daedric shapeshifter named Barbas, is often depicted as the Loyal Hound, and was created by Vile, who stores much of his power within his dog. Let's just call him what he is. Despite being a shapeshifter/dog, Barbas is usually a lot smarter than Clavicus. Perhaps it's because he stored all of his smart power within him or something, I don't know. Examples of Clavicus Vile being irresponsible are 1. The fact that he willingly splits his power into a dog, and 2. His creation of the sword Umbra, which is another instance of Clavicus splitting a part of his power from himself to assist in creating a rogue Daedric being. In Skyrim, Clavicus Vile was prayed to by a man named Sebastian Lort, who asked the prince for a cure to his daughter's lycanthropy. Clavicus Vile gave him an axe to finish the job. That was the cure. When a group of vampires prayed to him for a cure, Clavicus granted their wish by having the last Dragonborn inadvertently murder them. He's got something against curses or diseases for sure. There's something going on there. Again, though, this dude is just a huge asshole. If you become a Clavicus Vile Warlock, you may gain access to his most iconic artifact, the Mask of Clavicus Vile, which makes the wearer much more affable and likable. However, my recommendation, don't sign a contract with him. Hermaeus Mora is an interesting prince to talk about because he offers up quite a bit to those who follow him. He's the Daedric Prince of knowledge, secrets, fate, and destiny. Mora's realm of Apocrypha is basically an unending and not very well organized library of all the information he's gathered during his infinite lifespan. He also depicts himself as a mass of eyeballs and tentacles, giving him a sort of eldritch vibe that the other princes don't bring to the table. Hermaeus is extraordinarily manipulative and crafty, and he's the type of dude to murder a man over a pointless piece of knowledge simply because he didn't have it. He's very popular with any person seeking knowledge of any kind, and because of this, it's pretty easy for him to draw in new followers. The Dragonborn DLC in Skyrim really shows us just how scary Hermaeus Mora can be. He lures you in with knowledge or power, and then wraps his tentacles around you, forcing you into his services. It's what he does with Miraak, and it's presumably what he does with the last Dragonborn as well. Nothing comes without its price with Hermaeus Mora, which makes entering into his services particularly dangerous. Hermaeus Mora basically enslaves Miraak after entering him into his services originally, but it seems as though Miraak was unable to leave Apocrypha, which makes me think that Mora may not have wanted Miraak to be a warlock, but just simply enjoyed owning a Dragonborn servant for himself at the end of the day. In Skyrim, we can see how Septimus Cygnus was another person who became a pawn in Mora's schemes, and once Hermaeus Mora was finished with him, he murdered the senile old man in cold blood, literally dusting him into ash for really no reason. ESO also added Arcanists into the lore, which are spellcasters who cast runes and glyphs derived from an apocryphal tome, individualized to the wielder, creating tomes that are fully unique and only readable by the owner of the book. Some of these arcanists see Hermaeus Mora and Apocrypha as a means to an end, while others fully devote themselves to the Demon of Knowledge. Hermaeus Mora's many tomes of Eldritch knowledge may draw in new warlocks, particularly his Black Books and the Agma Infinium, which contain Eldritch knowledge and grand powers to those who can read and comprehend the lessons buried in between the lines. All in all, if you decide to sign a Warlock Pact with Hermaeus Mora, you should expect to be discarded or mistreated at some point in your tenure with him, despite how appealing the knowledge or power may at first be. Hircine is probably the chillest prince we've talked about thus far. He's the Daedric Prince of the Hunt, and is known as the Master of Beasts and the Master of the Chase as well. Hircine is seen as the father of lycanthropy and other rare diseases. Hircine is really cool, honestly. A very straightforward prince. He enjoys the hunt, and even has a law about fair sportsmanship, making a pact with him probably a pretty smart thing, since it'll probably be a pretty fair pact. The law of fair hunt states that you shall never take a quarry that has no chance of escape. Hircine is all about fairness and honor in sport. That's not to say he's a good guy though, but his concepts are really cool. Let's not forget about that one time he turned the island of Solstheim into his own personal playground, gathering the strongest beings on the island and forcing them to fight in a gladiatorial labyrinth. However, it is noteworthy to point out that in that encounter, when you finally fight Hircine himself if you make it to the end, he nerfs himself, and allows you to choose your desired style for him to fight you in. Again, he's all about fairness, and I'm totally about that. Hircine doesn't require worship of any sort as well, although there are plenty of people who do worship him throughout Tamriel. Hircine's best known artifact is the Savior's Hide, which is a powerful pelt that often grants the wielder special abilities. Hircine may also bless, or curse depending on your viewpoint, his followers with lycanthropy, should they prove themselves useful. If and when a werebeast dies, however, their souls are claimed by Hircine, who sends them to his hunting grounds for an unending game of predator versus prey. Basically, if you're a werebeast of any kind, or if you're a hunter, forester, or some sort of person who's going to be doing sport of any kind, Hircine would be a good fit for your character. Just expect to be regularly tested and trained while you're in his services, as well as, constantly engaged in sport in the afterlife. Jyggalag is the next prince on our list, and, well, honestly, I don't know about this one. Jyggalag is the Daedric Prince of Perfect Order, and has only ever appeared in the Shivering Isles DLC, and we've only ever met one follower of his, so we actually don't have a lot of information to go off of on how he treats his followers. What we do know is that Jyggalag is said to be calculating, logical, and deductive. Because of this, Sheogorath claims that he's uninspired and a bit boring as well, but that's to be expected from his point of view. Jyggalag was once the most powerful of all the Daedric princes, and has recently been freed from his curse of madness, so he's roaming about Oblivion in potential need of warlocks. Things that Jyggalag has going for him are mostly vibes at this point. He seems like a prince that's down on his luck after getting beat up by the other princes all at once. It wasn't really fair in my opinion, but oh well. During the Grey March, Jyggalag was really just trying to get his realm back, which he didn't even get to do in the end. Poor guy. We know from Daius that Jyggalag assigned him with all the tasks that he deemed distasteful, so as a warlock of Jyggalag, you'd probably have lots of stuff to do, but it may be quite meticulous. Also well structured and organized, though. If he tries to recreate his great library, it'll definitely need bookkeepers and attendants, that's all I'm saying. Really, he seems like an extremely honest being at the end of the Shivering Isles as well, and I'd imagine him to be a fairly upfront, blunt kind of guy. If you're nice enough, he may even lend you his greatsword, the Sword of Jyggalag. He'd have high expectations for sure, and I'll bet you'd not get many days off, but again, for the right person, a pact with Jyggalag could be really enticing. Okay, Malacath is the Daedric Prince of the Spurned and Ostracized, and his spheres include Broken Oaths, Vengeance, and Battle. As a Warlock patron, he'd fit exceptionally well with any Orc characters, as he's seen as their patron deity, or with any type of outsider character. Malacath, as we talked about earlier, is the result of the conflict between Trinimac and Boethiah. Boethiah devoured Trinimac, and from his corpse was born Malacath. The popular story is that Boethiah ate Trinimac and pooped out Malacath. So as Trinimac became Malacath, so too did all of his elven followers turn into the Orsimer people, or the Orcs, or the pariah folk. Orcs, therefore, most commonly follow Malacath and his teachings, devoting themselves to the Code of Malacath, which is an unwritten set of laws that govern the everyday lives of those who follow it. It is a rather stern code, forbidding common sins like stealing and murder among one's kin, and championing vengeance, combat, and crafting. Malacath is also the first of the four corners of the House of Troubles as well, which is a Dunmeri grouping of Daedric princes who are seen as evil. Malacath's artifact is known as Valendrung, an ancient warhammer of Dwemer construction that is capable of crippling its opponents with even a single swing. Basically, Malacath is a deity to worship for those who have been expelled from any institution, hold a grudge, or for those who have broken an oath, making him a good patron for Locketted builds, Paladin Warlock builds. Orcs are a particularly good choice for a character in this class, and Dunmer are probably the least likely to worship Malacath of any of the other races. Okay, Mehrunes Dagon is up next, and he'd honestly be a really fun Warlock patron for just evil players. Dagon is the Daedric Prince of Destruction, Disaster, Change, Cataclysm, Revolution, and Ambition. Dagon is well known for wanting to conquer Tamriel, and for wreaking havoc across the lands. He's also the second corner so far from the House of Troubles. Dagon has attacked Ald Sotha, the childhood home of Sotha Sil, Mournhold, the capital of Morrowind, and in 3rd Era 433, he attacked the entire continent through his mortal assistants, the Mythic Dawn cult. The cult was led by Mankar Cameron, who you could potentially classify as a Warlock of Dagon. Mankar was given pretty good treatment by Dagon, all things considered, and was granted the Mysterium Xarxes, which is Dagon's holy book that holds extremely esoteric information about the Orbis within it. The book is said to have been written by Dagon himself, and is described as being evil, corrupting, and dangerous. Perhaps loyal enough warlocks to Mehrunes Dagon would be granted access to this devilish tome themselves. Better yet, Mehrunes Razor is another powerful artifact associated with the Prince of Destruction, which has the ability to kill with a single slice of the blade. Mehrunes Dagon is overall an extremely dangerous Daedric Prince, and I think he'd be a fun patron for evil characters to follow, and an extremely interesting patron for good aligned characters to be bound to, as he would no doubt force them into decisions that they would not want to partake in. Mephala is the web spinner, the Daedric Prince of secrets, lies, deception, murder, and betrayal, though it has been stated that her true sphere is obscured from mortals. Mephala and Boethiah actually share a lot in common, with Boethiah's sphere of plots and murder, and Mephala's as well. Both princes are also members of the Reclamations worshipped by the Dunmer of the New Temple. However, Mephala is far more secretive than Boethiah, and seems to be more interested in mortals on a personal level. Boethiah is all about defeating the oppressors through murderous plots, and Mephala is more about lies and deception and murderous plots for the sake of intrigue and desire. For instance, Mephala's quest in Oblivion involves pitting a Nordic family and a Dunmeri family against one another for literally no real reason other than to just do it. In Skyrim, Mephala tempts the last Dragonborn with the Ebony Blade, a relic of hers that gets stronger the more betrayals its blade tastes. Mephala is also directly involved with the Dunmeri Morag Tong, a legal group of assassins in Morrowind said to murder in her name. So if you're a character who wants to be able to bend the emotions of others to suit your needs, Mephala seems like a prime patron choice. Any assassin-type characters as well would be perfectly fit under the spheres of the web spinner. Much like Azura, Meridia is frequently viewed in a positive light by mortals, at least when compared to the other Daedric princes. Meridia is the Daedric Prince of Life and Light, and was once actually a Magna Gi, one of the original daughters of Magnus who decided to remain outside of Aetherius. She claimed her spot in Oblivion amongst the other Daedric princes, and supplanted herself firmly as a Daedric prince thereafter. Meridia is very controlling, and sees mortals as a means to an end more than anything else. She supposedly can grant the gift of immortality to her faithful, but this removes their free will entirely, making them essentially slaves for Meridia to use as she sees fit. She hates the undead, and gets involved in regular conflicts with the other Daedric princes, namely Molag Bal. For her extremely faithful, Meridia may choose to gift her followers with her infamous sword, the Dawnbreaker, which emits holy light and casts down the armies of the dead. Basically, all in all, despite her spheres seeming welcoming and whatnot, Meridia is not a Daedric Prince that I would recommend taking a pact with unless you're role-playing a character who is unfortunately stuck with her. Okay, Molag Bal is the Daedric Prince for completely evil psychopaths. His spheres are domination and enslavement, particularly of mortals, and he takes pleasure in their suffering and torture. Genuinely, he's just not a good dude at all. Stay away from this guy. His quest in Oblivion is to make a man who pledged an oath of pacifism break his vow and murder you in front of his wife's grave. His quest in Skyrim is to torture and capture the soul of a priest of Boethiah. His own realm of Cold Harbor is a twisted version of Tamriel, basically his fanfic version of how it would look if he took it over. It's very blue for some reason. He's also the father of vampirism, which came about when he forced himself upon a Nedic virgin. She died from the assault and was risen as the world's first vampire. And Molag Bal's artifact is aptly named the Mace of Molag Bal, an extremely jagged and horrid weapon, often used as a corrupting tool for those who wield it. Molag Bal is the third corner of the House of Troubles for a reason. He's extremely demonic and vile, and I would in no way recommend this guy as a Warlock patron, except for in the most evil of campaigns. Namira is the Daedric Prince of Hunger, Decay, and Revulsion, and her sphere is said to be the Ancient Darkness, whatever that means. She's also a patron to those who live in squalor, or any vermin that make mortals just generally uncomfortable. Oddly though, she's a Daedric Prince that I actually feel would be pretty good for a very specific handful of people. She's a Daedric Prince that's heavily associated with Khajiit mythology and culture, as their mythos states that she was the initial influence who caused Lorkhan to want to create the Mundus. The Khajiit also refer to Namira as an Urdra, meaning the eldest and most powerful Daedra. However, most cultures grant this title to Nocturnal. So creating a Khajiiti warlock of Namira would be a fitting choice for sure. Namira has some overlap with Malacath, as many followers of Namira were outcasts or ostracized from their old lives. However, it seems with Namira's sort of ostracized group, they're doing this to themselves on purpose. Many Namira worshippers purposefully live in filthy or nasty conditions that others would deem unsavory. Basically, Namira worshippers are a bunch of gross little deviant freaks. But that's okay. It's okay to be a gross little freak. It's not really my vibe. I find Namira to be disgusting, but I can't lie. She does seem to treat her followers pretty well. In Oblivion, for instance, her Daedric quest involves killing off priests of Arkay, a natural enemy of Namira, that were attempting to take some of her nasty little freaks out of a dark, dank, alien ruin that they were living in. In Skyrim, her quest involves cannibalism, and sacrificing a priest of Arkay yet again. If you eat this dude's flesh, she'll reward you with a disgusting ring. So basically, if you're wanting to be a nasty little freak, Namira is the prince for you. She'll watch your back, and she'll make sure you can live the grossest existence possible. If you sign a pact with Namira as your patron, you're almost certain to be well protected, so long as you stay faithful and stay filthy, baby. Nocturnal is right up there with Hircine for me in terms of Warlock patrons. She's the Daedric Prince of Night, Shadow, Darkness, and Mysteries. Nocturnal, like I said when mentioning Namira, is referred to as an Urdra, again, denoting her status as primordial and powerful, with at least one reference suggesting that she's older than reality itself. It is said that nearly all of the royalty of Oblivion recognize her claim to this status as Urdra. What she chooses to do with this power, though, is the interesting part of her being. I just had a whole rant about her in my Daedric Realms video, and I think I'll just retread some of my previous points here. I find Nocturnal interesting because I believe that she enjoys the Mundus and the mortal sphere. Perhaps she finds it intriguing because she's lived so long, and for her, mortals are an interesting and new development. Disregarding her horrible implementation in ESO, her interactions with mortals show that she doesn't wish the mortal plane any harm, really. When her cowl was stolen by Emerderaloth, reference, she didn't murder him in retribution or vengeance. That's more Malacath's vibe. Instead, she put an incredibly devious curse on the cowl, making those who wear it unable to be remembered by the world. However, this curse had a built-in loophole that we see in the Elder Scrolls IV's Thieves Guild quest. I've always viewed this that Nocturnal sort of respected Emhyr Daraloth stealing the cowl and decided to give him a test to see if he could conquer it. Speaking of the Thieves Guild, Nocturnal's seen as a patron to all thieves, granting them guidance and safe passage through her shadows in the night. The Khajiit have a specific myth about this scenario as well. Nocturnal also has her own task force of mortal agents known as the Nightingales. These Nightingales are basically Nocturnal's warlocks. She grants them extraordinary powers, and in return, Nightingales are pledged into eternal service to the Mistress of Shadows, and they're sworn to protect the Skeleton Key, an infamous artifact of extreme power with the ability to open gateways through doors that are either literal or figurative. She doesn't even require worship from her Nightingales, but she more sees them as working together in a business type of relationship. So my point here is that Nocturnal is no stranger to interacting with mortals and creating pacts and deals. If you're thinking of doing some sort of a thief character for any of your D&D campaigns, and so long as you're okay with pledging your soul to her in the Twilight Sepulchre, then she may just be the patron for you. Peryite is the Daedric Prince of Pestilence, Natural Order, Tasks, and Contamination, and he's been put in charge of ordering the lowest orders of Oblivion. Peryite, well, yeah, okay, honestly, what's there to say about this guy? He's basically the Daedric Prince of Diseases who has a side hustle with organization. He depicts himself as a dragon, which is said to be some sort of primordial joke about Akatosh that no one but him understands. He's essentially that one dude who has a funny inside joke, and then he tells everyone about it, but no one else gets it because it's an inside joke, so it's not funny. It's not funny, Peryite. Knock it off. No, I'm kidding. I actually like that lore about him. I don't know what to say about Peryite. He's pretty polite in his dealings with mortals, all things considered, but he also controls a really frightening sphere, since he could theoretically inflict plague and mass disease across Tamriel if he wished to. Thankfully, he's pretty chill. Peryite also is known for his association with the powerful Dwemer shield called Spellbreaker, which grants the wielder an immense protection against magics of all sorts. If you do worship Peryite, he seems to kind of have your back, but he'll also probably give you some disgusting disease in the process. So, sort of like Namira, if you're into being a nasty little freak, Peryite is probably right up your lane. Okay, Sanguine. Sanguine is the party god, and at face value, he seems like a pretty fun choice. Sanguine is the Daedric Prince of revelry, hedonism, debauchery, lust, perversion, and indulgences of darker natures. Basically, he's the Prince of Overindulgence. This might be good for some people, but I think partying hard is only fun for like a few days, a month, maybe a year. If your Warlock patron is Sanguine, I think he's going to expect a lot of excess drinking, sex, and perversion from you, which is really just not good on the mind or body after a long time. Sanguine depicts himself as a red little goblin guy most of the time, and he's always up to some goofy antics, whether it's making the entire court of the county of Leowen naked, or if it's a hangover-style drinking contest with the most powerful man in Skyrim. Those Sanguine deems worthy receive a staff known as Sanguine's Rose, which typically allows the user to summon a Daedra from the fields of revelry to aid them. Who knows what antics you and that Daedra will get up to should you encounter the Rose. If you indulge in a pact with Sanguine, just make sure he signs in the contract that you'll never get a hangover, and you'll probably be sad. Sheogorath. This might make some people upset, but I wholeheartedly would not sign a Warlock pact with this man. Sheogorath is the Daedric Prince of Madness and Creativity, and his motives are literally unknowable. Sheogorath is the fourth corner of the House of Troubles as well, and this is precisely due to his complete unpredictability. The Dunmer believe that Sheogorath in fact tests them for mental weaknesses. It's not often showcased in the games, but Sheogorath can be legitimately terrifying. He once threw an entire moon called Bar Dao at Vivec City just to spite Vivec. It was caught, but eventually, Bar Dao would later crash into Vardenfell, destroying a good portion of Morrowind in the process. However, in Elder Scrolls 3, he's just a silly guy who asks the Nerevarine to kill a bullnetch with a fork. And then in Oblivion, he asks the hero of Kvatch to toy with an entire village by causing a fake prophecy of theirs to become true, literally raining flaming dogs from the sky in the process. But then in Elder Scrolls Legends, his DLC is the worst one of them all, on just a personal level of being straight up mean. A Dunmer man named Talim Rend came to Sheogorath to ask him to forget his involvement in the death of his son. Sheogorath then manipulated Talim's mind, making the man believe that he had come to Sheogorath to cure his son of madness. He forced Talim to believe that his son was still alive, then further forced him into driving 3 people insane in order to, quote, save his son. Talim then condemned these souls to madness and returned home to realize that his son was dead the whole time. So he's very much a mixed bag of unpredictability and cruelty, honestly. He's very dangerous. Another unlooked part of Sheogorath's sphere is that he's responsible for mental illness. If anyone has ever had a family member or a friend who has suffered from dementia, you'll know that it's not something to mess around with. Same thing with any number of mental diseases or brain damage that spending time in the Shivering Isles can cause you. Sheogorath is known to wantonly pass around his unpredictable staff, the Wabbajack. This staff is imbued with the most chaotic enchantment of all: complete randomness. The wielder of the Wabbajack can never tell what the staff will do to those it strikes. Because of Oblivion and Skyrim, most people think Sheogorath is funny and cool, and I would agree with you wholeheartedly. I love him. He's a great character. Just don't sign into a pact with him. That sounds like a terrible idea. Okay, Vaermina is our last Daedric Prince, and she's the Daedric Prince of nightmares, dreams, corruption, horrors, and evil omens. Basically, she's just bad news, but she could be a really cool thematic Warlock patron for the right character. Vaermina is connected to omens, which are malicious Daedric entities that spread chaos on Nirn. It's said that her followers believe these omens to be directly sent from Vaermina herself, and they believe that those who serve the cult of Vaermina well enough may be killed off by an omen and reborn in the realm of Quagmire, where they can continue the important work of their prince. Vaermina has been categorized as one of the most destructive of the Daedric princes, and one of the most consistently demonic of them as well, alongside Molag Bal, Mehrunes Dagon, Peryite, and Boethiah. The ways in which she embodies this destructive nature is through methods of torture. On one occasion in particular, the Orb of Vaermina was lost, one of her powerful scrying artifacts, and it began causing nightmares to seep into reality, creating a horrifying palace of waking nightmares. Also, Vaermina worshippers are said to commune with her through their dreams, and the horrors that she shows her faithful temper their minds, making them less likely to feel fear. And those are basically the highlights of Vaermina. She has a staff called the Skull of Corruption, which is another powerful staff, and has the power to create a hostile clone of whoever had the misfortune of being on the other end of this weapon. Overall, Vaermina is a prince with not a whole lot about her, really, to be honest, but I think she provides enough intrigue in just her sphere alone to be a unique prince to follow. Just bear in mind that you'll probably never get a good night's sleep again as a Warlock of Vaermina. And that's all the Daedric princes rated as Warlock patrons in D&D. Let me know how you feel about my opinions on these princes. Obviously, if you're doing a homebrew campaign, by the way, you can make your characters however you want, so don't take anything that I said here too seriously. It's just meant as a loose guideline for how these princes behave. If you made it this far, consider watching my Daedric Prince video, where we heavily discuss the importance of these princes in the Elder Scrolls universe, much more in depth than I did here. Anyway, I've been Daryloth, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you around in the next one. Peace out.